Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to hack into one of the most fundamental parts of being human, motivation. We're going to dive into the surprising science behind why we do the things we do. Let's get right into it. I mean, have you ever really stopped to think about it? What is that invisible force, that little nudge, or sometimes a giant shove that pushes you to chase after a goal or to learn a new skill? It feels deeply personal, but it's actually wired into some of the oldest, most powerful parts of our brains. And the main character in this whole story is your brain's reward system. And this isn't some tiny little spot in your brain. It's a whole network, a super complex circuit that's been fine-tuned over millions of years to guide pretty much everything you do.
So a really simple way to picture this is to think of it like your brain's own built-in engine. And its whole job, really, is to keep you moving towards stuff that's good for you and your survival. You know, things like finding great food, connecting with people, and learning new things.
All right, so let's pop the hood on this inner engine, shall we? Let's see what really makes it tick. Okay, so every engine needs fuel, right? Well, the key fuel for our motivational engine is a neurotransmitter you've definitely heard of, dopamine. Now, most people call it the pleasure molecule, but it turns out that's not quite right. The real story is way more interesting. And that whole story really boils down to the super important difference between wanting something and actually liking it. You'd think they're the same thing, but in your brain, they're two totally different systems. All right, let's break this down. Wanting, that's the desire, the craving, the part that gets you off the couch. That's all dopamine. It's what propels you. Now, liking, that's the actual, this is good feeling you get from the reward. That's handled by other brain chemicals. So think of it this way. Dopamine is the gas pedal, not the feeling of arriving at your destination. And look, this isn't just some random idea. A leading neuroscientist, Kent Burridge, he absolutely nailed it. He explains that dopamine creates incentive salience. Basically, it cranks up the volume on how attractive and important something seems, which makes you want it. It's the molecule of pure pursuit. Okay, so if our brain is always chasing rewards, that brings up a pretty big question. Where do we get these rewards from? Do they come from the outside world or from inside ourselves? And this, right here, is where things get super practical for our everyday lives. So you can think of motivation as coming in two main flavors. You've got intrinsic motivation. That's when you do something just for the pure joy of it. Think about playing an instrument just because you love it. And then you've got extrinsic motivation. That's when you're doing something for an external prize, like running a race to get a trophy. So logically, you'd think, hey, if I take something I already love doing, my intrinsic motivation, and I add an external reward, like getting paid for it, that should be like rocket fuel for my motivation, right? I mean, you're getting paid to do what you love. What could be better? Well, here's where the brain gets kind of weird. It turns out that's not always the case. In fact, it can do the exact opposite. This is a real phenomenon called the over-justification effect, and it's a huge warning about how we think about rewards. So check this out. Here's how it goes down. Imagine you love to paint, just for fun. Then someone starts paying you for your paintings. Your brain subtly starts to rewire its logic. It goes from, I do this because I love it, to I do this because I get paid. The reason shifts from internal to external. And before you know it, that original joy just kind of fades. It starts to feel like a job. Okay, so that's the science. Maybe a little bit of a downer. But the big question is, how can we use this knowledge? How do we make this work for us? To build up that powerful internal drive instead of crushing it? The answer, it turns out, is to get ourselves into a state that I'm willing to bet you felt before, even if you didn't know what it was called. It's called flow. And flow is pretty much the ultimate state of intrinsic motivation. You know that feeling when you're so deep into what you're doing that the rest of the world just disappears. Time flies by, you feel totally in control, and the activity itself is the reward. That's the flow state. It's you operating at your absolute peak, and it feels amazing. So how do you find this magical flow state? Well, here's the secret. If the challenge is too low for your skill level, you get bored, right? But if the challenge is way too high, you just get anxious and stressed out. Flow lives right in that perfect sweet spot, where the challenge is just right for your skills. All right, so you want to find your flow. Here's the playbook. 1. Set a really clear, immediate goal. Know exactly what you're trying to do. 2. Find that just manageable challenge. You got to stretch yourself, but not so much that you snap. 3, this is a big one. Get rid of distractions. Turn off your phone. Deep focus is key. And 4, make sure you can get immediate feedback so you know in the moment if you're on the right track. So when you put all of this together, it really lets you rethink what motivation is all about. It's not some mystical force. It's not just about trying harder. It's about working with your own biology. And here's the most powerful idea of all. Your brain is literally hardwired with this ancient system that doesn't just want you to survive. It wants you to explore, to learn, and to grow. And this quote here really drives it home. Think about it. If we didn't get some kind of deep satisfaction from learning and mastering things just for the heck of it, why would we ever bother? That intrinsic drive is what pushed us to develop all the skills and abilities that make us human. And that right there is the ultimate takeaway. Once you understand how this system works, the dopamine, the wanting versus liking, the power of flow, you're no longer just a passenger. You can actually get behind the wheel. You can be the driver of your own motivation. So I want to leave you with a challenge. Thinking about everything we've talked about, what is one thing in your life? Maybe it's a task at work, a chore at home, or a hobby you've lost touch with. What's one thing you could redesign to hit that flow state and reignite your own intrinsic motivation?